Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vandiazo back in the Card 5 Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll start, shall we? This time we're covering set 9 for Griphogila, Keter Sanctuary. So first up, sorry that this review, sorry this deck profile is coming a little bit late. I've been sick. I'm still sick now, but I'm able to record now, or at least for now. So let's go ahead and get the start before my voice dies on me again. So Keter Sanctuary for Griphogila, I originally didn't think was going to be my favorite. In fact, I thought it was going to be my least favorite because I don't know, it just felt like I was going to plaster a bunch of generic cards into it, and granted that's what I've been doing for all of them, but Keter Sanctuary turned out to be the most consistent and therefore my favorite of all of them because it also has power and defensive power to boot. So let's go ahead and get the started, shall we? And you can see what I mean about Griphogila being probably the best for Keter Sanctuary. First up, we have our starter today in Griffo Seed. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. You can have a total of 5 or more cards. Sorry, not 5 or more. I'm sorry, I'm sick. I can't read right now. You can have a total of 5 cards in your ride deck made up of this card, 3 Calamity cards, and an Over Trigger. The Calamity cards still have to be of different grades. And the continuous Vanguard, this unit gets plus 2k for each Calamity card with a different card name in your soul. So technically speaking, if they did start printing more Calamity cards and they gave you more ways to put them into soul, then yes, technically speaking, you could just stay on Griffo Seed the entire game and get a fuck ton of numbers. I can't wait for Bush to make a genuine reason of why you would want to do that, and I cannot wait to see it happen. And then his other abilities, Auto Vanguard. At the beginning of your main phase, you choose a Calamity card from your ride deck, you put it to your soul, and then if you want to, you can put 3 Calamity cards from your soul that were in the ride deck into face up into the ride deck, and then you search your deck or hand for up to 1 Dragon Tree of Eclectic Decimation, Griphogila, ride it as stand, and if you search your deck, you shuffle it, and if you wrote a card, you choose 2 rear guards, and you put Dragon Tree markers on each of them. So all around, very solid skill, because that means you don't have to discard for ride deck, which is very important in this deck where you want to have defensive power to stall out to your main boy Griphogila's skill going off fully. So, you know, being able to keep some hand cards for ride deck while it's only 3 cards can definitely make the difference between winning and losing. Being able to stay on same base power as grade 1s and 2s because, you know, it goes from 6 to 8, then from 8 to 10, and then granted it's only a 12k base, but that's where you remove the 3 Calamity cards, and then you go into Griphogila, you can either go from hand or deck, depending if you have still some left in deck, and then you can get 2 rear guards with Dragon Tree markers. All around, it's a very solid starter. I like its skill. It literally does what the deck needs all on its own in a single card. Bushy did a really good job with this one. I'll give him that. Solid one of. And then we have our ride deck cards. So you can ride these in, or you can send these to soul in any order. It's not specified of what order you can go in, but I always like to go as 1, 2, 3. And we'll start off with start of the end. They all share the same ability. So this is the grade 1 Calamity card, and then we have Minutious Metamorphosis, and then we have Looming Demise. Like I said, they all have the same ability, which is Counterblast 1. They're normal orders, and then you choose up to 1 Calamity order from your deck. You really put it to your hand and shuffle your deck. So all of them share the same ability. If you ran them in your main deck, you could just search them. I don't know why you'd run them in your main deck. That's a waste of counterblast to get a free search, when in reality you could use that same counterblast to advance your board more and draw more hand cards. So don't run them in the main deck here, but hey, it's nice to know that they have an ability even though they do absolutely nothing outside of being Calamity cards. But again, you can put them into soul for Griffo Seed's effect in any order you wish, but yeah, I just choose to always go 1, 2, 3. And then we have our 5 Dragon Tree markers, because you're only going to need 5, and that is, they are not normal orders. They're just cards that go outside of your deck, and when they're put on your rearguard circles, during your turn, if you have Vanguard, Dragon Tree, or Mesquez in its card name, all your units on those circles get plus 5k power. So right now, there's only 2 ways to get Dragon Tree markers. One is from this ability, or 2 of them are from this ability, and the other one is from your grade 1 of the Dragon Tree line, whatever one you're choosing to build your deck around. So currently, there's only 1 deck that can actually get 2 Draco Tree markers on 1 circle, and that is Stoichea. And even for Stoichea to do that, they need some bullshit amount of luck, but I can't wait to find a Stoichea player that actually does it. But anyways, being able to get a free 5k is all around pretty solid because it makes your numbers a little bit more dangerous. It also adds power to the Vanguard because the Vanguard can gain benefits from these circles. So all around, the Draco Tree marker is great, and especially because it has all your units on the circle. So if you found a way to put on Vanguard circle, it's going to get additional 5k. Solid card nonetheless. In this deck, you definitely only need 5 because you're only ever going to be able to put it on 5 units at once, but watch Bushy find a way to prove me wrong, which I'll be very happy for. Then we have our Over Trigger and True Arbitrator Dragon of 100 Swords, Duravassel, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. In my opinion, this is what makes the deck like 50-50. Like in my personal opinion, Keter Sanctuary in terms of overall cards is better for Griphogila to be built in, but then the Over Trigger, which is a fair argument considering Griphogila's entire game plan relies on the Over Trigger, brings it down to medium because it has the worst Over Trigger for its entire gimmick, but whatever. Anyways, the Over Trigger, you may only have 1 Over Trigger in your deck. Reveals a trigger, remove that card, draw a card, choose your mutes, it gets plus 1 for the turn, and reveal a draw check, activate its additional effect, which is until end of turn. You can also perform draw checks for the battle of your rear guard attacks. The one time I died from deck out with Griphogila was with this deck because I fucking had the Over Trigger and I didn't realize I was close to decking out until it was too late. So Duravassel is the overtrigger in this deck because there's no better like dark overtrigger for theming wise with Griphogila. You can definitely run Albari. Frankly, Albari is 10 times better, but hey, there's the Keter over. Might as well use it. You're not really going to need it because if you get to the point where you can play this, you probably already won, and if you didn't, then yeah, Albari is probably the better choice. But like I said, Keter for Keter, so one of Duravassel in the right deck. And then we have our normal triggers. First, we have 3 copies of Bard of Heavenly Song Alpac. Great Zero boost, 15k shield, 4k power, continues guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard's great triggers plus 5k shield. So, 20k shield, pretty nice. It's a front trigger. So, when you drive check it, your farmer power increase. And typically, you're swinging for like 25 to 28k swings. So, being able to put them to 35 and 38 are pretty good numbers. That's a 20k or 25k drop for each swing, which is pretty nice. And not to mention the fact that it has a 20k shield, so you can be a little bit more defensive. And like I said, defensive is the most important thing about getting Griphogila's skill off. And considering this deck is very defensive alone already, being able to increase your hand cards and get more defensive options like this is pretty nice with 3 of. Then we have a total of 8 draws, 4 copies of Exalting Knight Ifred. You can really make this any draw you want, but I chose to make this a vanilla just because, I don't know why, it's been a while since I've used her. And I remember I used to have really good luck with her, and I still do now. Great Zero boost, 5k shield, 5k base. Just a good draw, helps get hand cards. And then we have 4 more copies of Protection Magic Pro OB. So Great Zero boost, 5k shield, 4k power, draw trigger, continues guard circle of opponent's Vanguard's a great 3 plus 5k shield. So, still 10k shield, not as amazing as Alpac, but being able to increase your hand still makes it pretty decent, and being a 10k shield at that is just all around solid card. So we run 8 draws, 3 fronts. You don't really need crits. The Vanguard's already pressure enough, and then you already have a bunch of on-hit pressure. Frankly, crits would ruin the deck, so yeah, just kind of run with this one. You'll pretty much kill your opponent via pressure of everything. Then we have our 4 normal heals and circling sorcerers. Great Zero boost, 15k shield, 5k power. Standard heal, not so much about it. I don't really like any of the other counter heals. None of them are really cool to me, especially because like they're very situational, and if you don't end up in those situations where their abilities go off, they're only 10k shields, meaning, well, yes, overall they have more shield because they have 25 compared to 15. I'd rather have the consistent 25 out of a possible like 50-50, not even 50-50. The odds are definitely less, but of a 20k shield to a 25k shield. I'd just rather have the 15k shield consistent, but if you want the counter heals, go ahead and put them in your deck. Then we move on to grade 1s. First up, we run 3 copies of Tier Square Sorceress. So, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Although the first ability you would never use when this unit is rode upon by a Pentagleam Sorceress, counterboss 1, draw a card. That will never happen because you don't have Pentagleam Sorceress in this deck, and even if you did, you would never ride this because Griffo Seed's a thing. And then auto rear guard once per turn, the reason why it's in this deck, when your draft check fills a trigger unit, counterboss 1, choose an opponent from a rear guard and put it to bottom of deck. So, that is why this deck is deadly, because it bot decks half the things on your opponent board and has on-hit pressure for everything else. So quite literally, there's no way in hell your opponent's walking away from a turn without being severely crippled in some way, shape, or form. Like, it's great. I know I say I hate running cards that I cannot use the full abilities of, and that is still the case, but with this one I was willing to make that one exception because I wanted to see how far I can go with Griphogila, and I do not regret that statement at all. So being able just to send stuff to bottom is great. This deck can run into a counterboss problem if you don't see one of your 2 very powerful counterchargers, but even then, one of them is on hit pressure, and then one of them is, okay, either way you're fucked, you might as well just choose to make it easier for both of us. All around though, amazing grade 1, helps slow down the opponent's plays, helps get rid of pesky units that can't be retired but can still be chosen. Solid card nonetheless, 3 of. Then we have 4 copies of Dragon Tree Roach Solda Sakab. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. My least favorite in terms of art, and yet my favorite in terms of skill, and the one I called the most generic, and he's the one that made the deck the best. He has 2 skills. The first standard one between all the Draco Tree wretches. Auto is placed on rear guard by counterblasting 1. Choose one of your rear guards without any Draco Tree markers on it, and put a Draco Tree marker on it. Great. So slowly but surely can stack a bunch of Draco Tree markers. And like I said, this deck gets hand cards fast. Frankly, the chance of you not getting this into your hand very quickly is very doubtful. And I have said before in the other decks that if you don't get a copy of your grade 1 Draco Tree marker really early on, you kind of start losing very quickly because you lost your only real way of pressure. And while that is still true in this deck, because this deck gets a fuck ton of hand cards, that's not exactly the case, so it gets delayed by 1 turn. So as long as you get it out before you get to grade 2, or like your second grade 10 turn, you're fine. But after that, it's kind of like a 50-50 toss-up. So all around, Sack has a pretty good grade 2 or grade 1 for that alone, making a free Draco Tree marker by counterblasting 1, which there are a lot of counter charges in this deck, so you're pretty good on that front. And then auto back for rear guard circle once per turn. When any rear guard is placed in front of him in the same column as him, counterboss 1, draw a card. Or to be more exact, your rear guard. So fair enough, by placing 1 rear guard in front of him, you get a draw. It's not a bad skill. I mean, it's not an amazing skill because you still have to CB1 to draw a card. But again, there's a decent amount of countercharges in deck. Frankly, this does work towards your counterblasting though, because you want to have a certain amount of counterblast for one of the countercharges to go off. That kind of tells you what one of the countercharges is if you know what Keter is. But yeah, cool. Being able to get draws, increase your hand is pretty nice, and being able to create geometry markers by being placed, especially in a deck like Superior Call stuff, is just amazing. All around, it's a solid grade 1. I love it a lot. It helps increase hand, and honestly, yeah, this deck is terrifying when you see it play. I don't know how to explain it, especially because I'm sick, so I can't really think of a good way to explain it, but trust me, if you've seen this thing play, you know what I mean by it gets a fuck ton of hand cards and is not to be messed with defensive power. 4 of Solda. Then we have 4 copies of Palladium Zeal Dragon, our last grade 1, which is our PG. Grade 1 boost, 0 Shosis K base. Contains Sentinel, you may have 4 styles in deck, and also playing Guard Circle. 2 units, it cannot be hit on the battle. If your hand is 2 or more cards, discard half of discard it. Standard PG, not specified, this means this only one card in hand you place it on Guard Circle. You don't have to discard one, that's great, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game. Though, to be fair with you, as aggressive as you want in the early game kind of translates to still be extremely defensive. Literally, I've had a few games where I've pulled out a full board on first grade 10 turn, and I still end up with 8 to 9 hand cards. No joke. That's how, like, that's all in. Full out aggressive, and I still have 8 to 9 hand cards. Yeah, there's no such thing as no aggressive power or, like, no defensive power until, like, the third grade 10 turn. That's when you start to have defensive problems, but having that ability with that PG is great because that means when your opponent does start pressuring you, you have to be a little bit smart on your guarding, but you can make it so that you get the most value out of your PG by dropping as much as you can for other things and then nullifying the biggest attack with very little. All around, solid PG. I like skill a lot. You can use Aegis Maya for it, but I wanted to use Palladium Zeal because it's the new PG with the new grade 10. Might as well use it as a 4 of. I don't know why I just had the taste of ice cream in my mouth as I said that. Then move on to our grade 2s. First up, we run 4 copies of the best countercharger in this deck. Turnaround Magic, Tanaluru. Tanaluru. Grade 2 and a 5K shield, 10K base. I just now realized its English name is actually different than its Japanese name. Well, sucks for me. Anyways, auto rear guard. At the end of the battle, she attacked while boosted. If your damage on has 3 or more face down cards, put it to soul countercharge 1. Okay, straight up, most broken card in this deck. So, nothing in this deck costs soul. So going to soul doesn't really matter. But being able to freely send itself to soul and get a counter charge while you have 3 or more face down damage, well, this gets you a guaranteed 2, possibly 1, and you have 2, and you have another good card that gets you a counter blast. Solid grade 2. It's just amazing. And best part is, it can attack on anything. It can attack a rear guard, it can attack a vanguard. Fuck it if it could attack a damage zone card, and as long as it was boosted and you have 3 or more face down cards in damage zone, free soul and counter charge. Solid grade 2. I love it a lot. Easy 4 of in this deck. Makes your deck so much easier to use in terms of cost. Then we have 4 copies of the thing your opponent will always guard. Knight of Demolition, Maredu. Grade 2, intercept, 5k shield, 10k base. Auto rear guard, this attack hits a vanguard. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and put it to bottom of deck. I love this deck so much because here's what normally my boards consist of. Griphogila, who has double critical, so they don't want to take that. This fucker in the back row with normally 2 Draco Tree markers placed from his ability. So Griphogila has a total of 33,000 double critical. At least one of these. So 2 columns are guardable because one of them is the Vanguard of double critical. And while, yes, it only has double crit, once you take one, you can't take the other ones. Then there's Maredu, who's going to bot deck a rear guard. This one's probably on board most likely, meaning I can possibly bot deck a rear guard by draft checking a trigger. And it's either a copy of this or another copy of Maredu / another on hit. Means that, or that essentially means if it's not her, that means my entire front row is essentially guard or I get a plus and you get a minus in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, I love this deck so much from that. You either lose a rear guard, I get resources, or you just go to 4 damage. I don't care which one it is. I get a plus out of this and you fucking lose something out of it. 4 of Maredu. Solid grade 2. Love it a lot. The only way it could be better is if it hit anything, but that would be too broken, so solid 4 of. Then we have 2 copies of this amazing order, which I love a lot, and that is Wisdom of the Beginning to open up the world. So, grade 2, normal order, play it by counterblasting 1, draw 2 cards, choose 2 cards from your hand, call each to rear guard if it's a grade less than or equal to your vanguard, and discard them if there aren't. So essentially, if one of them is a grade 10, the other one isn't, then technically we can call it. But I mean, again, they have said call if it's equal to or less than the vanguard. The vanguard's grade 10. There's nothing higher than grade 10 currently, so That is just the freest call I've ever seen. But yeah, so being able to, normally what I like to do this is call Sakab and then call Maredu to the same column as it, or call something to the same column as Sakab. Use Sakab's on place ability first, get a direct tree marker, then use his ability to get another draw because Maredu is placed right in front of him. So in total, I paid 3 counterblasts to draw 3 cards, call 2 cards, and get a direct tree marker. Easy plus, especially because you have this counter charger who does that, or like resets at least one of them. So good card nonetheless, very easy to use. I love this order a lot. 2 of. Then move on to our grade 3s. First, we have 2 copies of the Splits order, which is here just in case. Like, if your hand doesn't do anything, or like you're in that final grade 3 turn or final grade 10 turn where you're like right about to go into your over trigger moment and you need a little bit more guarding power, this is where this card comes in. 2 copies of Hopeful Testudo. So grade 3, Blitz order, if you have 3 or more units, choose one of your units and gets plus 15k for the battle. Solid card. It can work with units, not specifically rear guards, meaning your Vanguard counts towards it, so all you need is 2 rear guards, and boom, you hit the 3 units, either the Vanguard gets 15 or one of your other units gets plus 15, making it for a free trigger. All around, solid card. I like it a lot. Definitely helps with guarding power, and unless you're playing against a rear guard nuke deck, you are most likely going to have the rear guards to pull this off, so 2 of Hopeful Testude, solid card. Then we have 3 copies of other on-hit pressure, because again, on-hit pressure and it counter charges, and that is Knight of War damage Fusado. Grade 3 2 persona, 13k base. Continues to rear guard. This unit cannot be chosen by opponent's card effects. So that's an immediate fuck you to anyone who tries either mirror matching this or just tries bopping this thing in general. You cannot send him to bottom. You cannot retire him. You cannot lock him. You cannot bind him. You cannot dominate him. You cannot whatever him. The only way you can get rid of him is either if you target a column or you target everything. Like say for example, Braum Varina were to swing into Vanguard and it hit. Then if Braum Varina targeted Fusado's column, it would kill Fusado in it because it's not targeting him specifically, it's targeting the whole column. So that's how you get around Fusado. You target multiple units at once, but otherwise you ain't getting rid of him without attacking into him. And all around, he's a solid card because again, with his on-hit ability, whether he attacks a Vanguard or a rear guard, you get a free counter and soul charge, and while he has nothing in this deck uses soul as a resource, it does use a lot of counterblast, so being able to have on-hit pressure with this, the Vanguard, and Maredu along, and being able to constantly increase your counterblast count, yeah, this deck gets deadly very fast and your opponent drops hand cards out the wazoo. 3 of Fusado. Solid grade 3. And then we have our last card in the deck, and that is our main grade 10. 4 copies of Dragon Tree of Eclectic Decimation, Griphogila. Grade 10, Twin Drive Persona, I don't know what I was about to say, Intercept, 13k base, continues Vanguard during turn. This thing is plus 5k, free trajectory mark on your rear guard, and if you have 3 or more, it gets an extra crit, which is solid, so, you know, it gets a guaranteed 23 just from writing from Griphogila. And then if you have 3 or more, he gets an extra critical, so that he's at least a 20k double critical if you call only one of these babies, which is great. And if you call 2 more after the first one, then technically speaking, your Vanguard is a 38 with double critical, and with the boost, 46 double critical. All around, solid skill already, gets a lot of fucking numbers, gets a lot of pressure, and then auto Vanguard once per turn. When this unit attacks into the Vanguard, the only card that is Vanguard restricted, you choose a Face of Calamity card from your ride deck and you remove it from the game. And if you do not remove a card, you then choose an over trigger from your ride deck, you reveal it, you activate all of its trigger effects and its additional effects, meaning you get the 1 million, you get the draw, and then you get its additional drive check effect, you remove from the game, and then you stand all of your rear guards with Draco Tree markers on them. So that means if your full board has Draco Tree markers, they stand. I think the reason they specified rear guards is because at some point they're going to find a way to put it on the Vanguard circle. And when they do, this would be a board restand. And that would be deadly. So all around, solid card, has a lot of pressure on his own to be able to keep up throughout the game as long as you get 3 Draco Tree markers right out the gate. Trust me, if you get 3 Draco Tree markers on first grade 10 turn, your opponent's going to have a fucking hell of a game trying to keep up with you because they're going to have to deal with on-hit pressure galore and double critical. They know slowly but surely death's coming for them. But then also slowly being able to remove a card from game, your opponent knows the time ticker, but it's struggle for them to get past you because you have a fuck ton of hand cards from this. You've probably drawn all 4 of these at some point. You're getting a good amount of triggers. It's just all around terrifying deck to deal with. I mean, you know the board restand's coming along with the plus 1 million to someone. Whew, I pity anyone who fights this. All around, solid card nonetheless. Good grade 10, 4 of. That's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoy. Sorry if I'm going along about this a bit fast. Like I said, I'm sick and my throat is like hurting like hell right now. So all around though, this deck is great. Like I said, it's my favorite, even though I thought it was going to be a bunch of generic cards and that's why I was bored of it. It immediately kind of clicked to me that this was a great deck because there's a bunch of on-hit pressure. Your entire front row is always at least 2 cards are being guarded this turn, and then the last one is getting a free hit on someone most likely, and you are getting a plus in some way, shape, or form out of it. And all around, the deck is just deadly. Gets hand cards, gets a good amount of numbers, and then when it finally gets to the over trigger turn, your opponent's honestly probably long dead by then because you've outstalled them. All around, the deck's great. I love playing it and is my favorite Griphogila deck. Next place to it is Stoicheia, so which I'm gonna go do the deck profile of now before my default dies. So I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us for Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to set up your vanguards.